All right, y'all, welcome back to Antiwar Radio. It's Chaos 92.7 FM in Austin, Texas. I'm Scott Horton, and our next guest is my first guest. When I first started the weekend interview show here on Chaos Radio in 2003, the first guy I interviewed was Alan Bock, senior editorial writer at the Orange County Register and author of the column I on the Empire for Antiwar.com. Welcome back to the show, Alan.
Thank you very much, Scott. Good to be here.
Well, it's good to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing better than the country is, so what the heck?
Better than the country is. Well, I guess relatively speaking, that means at least you're all right or something.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I guess that could mean that you're in dire straits and you really need a hand, but you're still better off than America.
Well, it could be that.
Yeah, all right. No, okay. You sound like you're okay to me.
In fact, I'm very all right.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, listen, one of the reasons that why I've always loved your column so much is because you're such an optimistic guy. And you've been one of the most skeptical at Antiwar.com about the possibility of war with Iran for quite a long time now. And your current essay on our page is called Will the U.S. Attack Iran? Weighing all the recent hype from all the different directions as it's been coming out over the last couple of weeks, and weighing the possibility of whether there will be a war with Iran. What's your basic gut instinct on this question as of today, Alan?
I still think it's unlikely, but you can never underestimate the irrationality of the Bush administration. How's that?
Well, that's pretty fair. I think it's pretty clear that the Cheney cabal is still pushing for it. Elliot Abrams and Dick Cheney apparently still want this thing. But I guess the question is...
That seems to be the case.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that it seems to be mostly the military that's pushing back.
Yeah, that is interesting. Aren't they the ones, the standing army, the ones we're supposed to be the most afraid of, that they will go and find things to do, and that's why it's so great we have civilian supremacy over the military to prevent them from going wild?
Well... it's a good theory, and in a lot of cases it worked. But the military, I think, is upset over a lot of things. For starters, the war in Iraq is really, it's an open question whether the army is really hollowed out or whether it's salvageable. And the military leaders know this very well. They know it much better than almost anybody else. But with, extended tours, stop loss, so that people who were, scheduled to come to the end of their stint in the Army are told, sorry, you can't. There was this little bit of small print in the contract. We can keep you as long as we want. Reducing morale. You've got all kinds of mid-level officers that would normally you'd expect to sign up in a fairly large numbers for another stint with the Army have decided, nope, 2-3 tours in Iraq, getting shot at and hated. I think that's enough.
And it is people like Mike McConnell seem to be leading the charge against it. We thought, oh no, Admiral Fallon is gone. Now what do we have? Well, we got the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff apparently agrees with Admiral Fallon and is willing to come out publicly and say so, as he did last week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, pretty strong words from him, right?
Not very good, because, they have to, top brass can be arrogant and, sort of blind to what's going on down at the lower ranks, but they have to be, at least, they have some concern about the long-term health of their institutions. And those institutions are particularly the Army. If you want to put boots on the ground, where are you going to find them? They've done... lowered the standards for recruiting, done about everything they can short of a draft to keep the Iraq War from totally destroying the Army. They've got a problem, plus all the equipment that's going to have to be replaced over the next several years, assuming we don't get sensible and decide to adopt a non-interventionist foreign policy.
Well, yeah, then we wouldn't have to replace them at all. We could just, as Ron Paul told the Washington Post, we could defend this country with a couple of good submarines, which I think is my favorite Ron Paul quote of all time, actually. I like that spin. Most people would leave out unless, we just don't replace the tanks, which would be okay. Most people don't have that at the end there. But most of the talk is not about putting boots on the ground in Iran. It's about doing airstrikes and destroying their nuclear facilities and their Quds Force bases and things like that. maybe bomb them for a week or two. What do you think?
We know less about Iran than we knew about Iraq before we decided to do that invasion. But there are some things that we do know. It's a bigger country. It's got a bigger military. And insofar as they have nuclear facilities, we know that most of them are buried deep underground. And we're pretty darn sure that there are facilities that we don't know about. So you can go ahead and bomb nuclear facilities, but, that could be replaced. That could, delay, if they're really interested in getting a bomb, which I still think is an open question. If they're still interested in that, it will delay them for, half a dozen years maybe? How is that a long-term anti-proliferation policy?
Well, it doesn't seem like one. You look at the example in Iraq, which I guess is the best example. In 1981, the Israelis bombed the Osirak nuclear facility there, which was safeguarded by the IAEA. And it was after that Saddam Hussein said, wow, I better make an underground nuclear weapons program in order to, keep things like that from happening again.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only then that he tried to make nuclear weapons, not that he ever got very close, but still.
But still, by the time of the first Gulf War, what they did discover is that he was closer than anyone had any notion that he was.
Right.
That the weapons program was more advanced than any of the Western intelligence agencies had figured.
Right, and this was a policy that hadn't begun until the Israelis had bombed their above-board, safeguarded IAEA nuclear facility there at Osirak.
And beyond that, Iran rattled its missile sabers yesterday, which ought to be a reminder. They can close the Strait of Hormuz and put a chokehold on the world's oil supply, or at least on a great portion of it. They have either total control or tremendous influence over Hamas in the Gaza Strip and over Hezbollah in Lebanon. They can use those proxies to create all kinds of trouble for the United States, Israel, and the Sunni Arab countries as well.
Mm-hmm. And Muqtada al-Sadr has said multiple times that if America bombs Iran, his guys will go back to war in Iraq. And in the American Conservative magazine, William S. Lynn quoted Abdul Aziz al-Hakim, who's basically the power behind the throne of Nouri al-Maliki at the Supreme Islamic Council. And he's, I guess, basically the real commander of the Badr Corps. And he has also said, I think the quote was, "We will do our duty in the event of an American war with Iran," which means take Iran's side.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be.
And again, there's some controversy over to what extent Iran has been aiding the Shiite militias or actually sending people into Iraq to kill or harass Americans. But it seems pretty clear that they've done that to some extent, and they certainly have the capacity to increase that activity. And how can you not be sure that they would? So you would end up with a whole lot more American casualties in Iraq. And what seems to be almost a situation where we're on the verge of, if there were an inclination in the U.S. government to do so, that we could declare victory and start to leave. Because we've got Maliki saying, be a pretty good idea to have a timetable for withdrawal for this status of forces agreement, wouldn't it? And, the Bush administration, sort of views a timetable sort of like kryptonite and recoils in horror from the idea. But what we've got is an Iraqi government that is increasingly impatient with the American presence and increasingly thinking they're able to sort of handle things on their own. They may be right, they may be wrong. But one of the top American commanders in the papers today just said that, he expects Iraqi troops to be able to handle almost everything by early 2009.
Well, we've heard that before, but still, you're right that this would be a great opportunity to say, you know what, Maliki, you're right. We did win. Congratulations, pal. You're the dictator of Iraq. Now let's all get the hell out of here.
No, the democratic leader of Iraq.
Pardon me. Yeah, that's what I meant.
We've got to keep the pretense up.